Saint Pope Pius X was born Giuseppe Sarto on 2 June 1835 in the city of Raisa in Lombardy, Venezia. He was the second of 10 children born to Giovanni Sarto, the village postman, and Margherita Sanson. Giuseppe Sarto was ordained a priest in 1858 and was known for his learning and care for the sick. His intelligence led him all the way to be appointed Cardinal Archbishop of Venice in 1893. Being elected Pope in 1903, he chose as his motto, "To restore all things in Christ," which set the stage for his conservative reforms of the Church. His reforms included lowering the age of First Holy Communion, as well as promoting more frequent Holy Communion by all the faithful, a return to Gregorian chant and the teaching of the scholasticism of St. Thomas Aquinas, and the establishment of the Confraternity of Christian Doctrine, CCD, in each parish to teach the young. In 1908, Pope Pius X lifted the status of the United States as missionary territory and named 2 American cardinals. Saint Pope Pius X may be most famous for his defense of the Church against the heresy of Modernism, which aimed at destroying the doctrines of the Catholic faith, its teaching office, and its credibility. He died soon after the outbreak of the First World War on 20 August 1914. He was canonized in 1954 by the Venerable Pope Pius XII.
Hence it follows that to restore all things in Christ, and to lead men back to submission to God, is one and the same aim. To this, then, it behooves us to devote our care, to lead back mankind under the dominion of Christ. This done, we shall have brought it back to God. And when we say God, we do not mean to that inert being heedless of all things human, which the dream of materialists have imagined, but to the true and living God, one in nature, triple in person, creator of the world, most wise ordainer of all things, lawgiver most just, who punishes the wicked and has reward in store for virtue. E Supremi, 1903. That we make no delay in this matter is rendered necessary, especially by the fact that the partisans of error are to be sought not only among the Church's open enemies, they lie hid, a thing to be deeply deplored and feared, in her very bosom and heart, and are the more mischievous the less conspicuously they appear. We allude, venerable brethren, to many who belong to the Catholic laity, nay, and this is far more lamentable, to the ranks of the priesthood itself, who, feigning a love for the Church, lacking the firm protection of philosophy and theology, nay, more thoroughly imbued with the poisonous doctrines taught by the enemies of the Church, and lost to all sense of modesty, vaunt themselves as reformers of the Church, and forming more boldly into line of attack, assail all that is most sacred in the work of Christ, not sparing even the person of the divine Redeemer, whom, with sacrilegious daring, they reduce to a simple, mere man. Pascendi Dominici Gregis, 1907. The modernists pass judgment on the Holy Fathers of the Church even as they do upon tradition. With consummate temerity, they assure the public that the Fathers, while personally most worthy of all veneration, were ignorant of history and criticism, for which they are only excusable on account of the time in which they lived. Finally, the modernists try in every way to diminish and weaken the authority of the ecclesiastical magisterium itself by sacrilegiously falsifying its origin, character, and rites, and by freely repeating the calumnies of its adversaries. There is little reason to wonder that the modernists vent all their bitterness and hatred on Catholics, who zealously fight the battles of the Church. There is no species of insult which they do not heap upon them, but their usual course is to charge them with ignorance or obstinacy. When an adversary rises up against them with the erudition and force that renders them redoubtable, they seek to make a conspiracy of silence around him to nullify the effects of his attack. Bescendi Dominici Gregis, 1907. The age of discretion, both for confession and for Holy Communion, is the time when a child begins to reason, that is, about the 7th year, more or less. From that time on begins the obligation of fulfilling the precept of both confession and communion. A full and perfect knowledge of Christian doctrine is not necessary either for First Confession or for First Communion. Afterwards, however, the child will be obliged to learn gradually the entire catechism according to his ability. The knowledge of religion, which is required in a child in order to be properly prepared to receive First Communion, is such that he will understand according to his capacity those mysteries of faith which are necessary as a means of salvation, and that he can distinguish between the bread of the Eucharist and ordinary material bread, and thus he may receive Holy Communion with the devotion becoming his years. Quam Singulare, 1910. Jesus has loved us with an immense, infinite love, and he came on earth to suffer and die so that, gathered around him in justice and love, motivated by the same sentiments of mutual charity, all men might live in peace and happiness. But for the realization of this temporal and eternal happiness, he has laid down with his supreme authority the condition that we must belong to his flock, that we must accept his doctrine, that we must practice virtue, and that we must accept the teaching and guidance of Peter and his successors. Further, whilst Jesus was kind to sinners and to those who went astray, he did not respect their false ideas, however sincere they might have appeared. He loved them all, but he instructed them in order to convert them and save them. Notre Charge Apostolique, 1910.